Dámy a pánové, ľudkovia, poďme sa do toho pustiť Game Awards, ale najprv si nastavím zvuk. Cečko. Tebe dáme. Toto, počkaj, toto si musím upraviť. Dobre. No. Tiež cečko. Dobre. A tady to dáme tiež si. Alright then. Počkajte, zvuk bude? Bude. Dobre, ale dali by sme ho trošku tikšie. Furt moc. Dobre, to by šlo. No. Takže, dámy a pánové, ľudkovia, kde sa na to? Môžeme čekovať. Hehe, Wukong. Kurňa, tenhle tigrík má sral kuravský mohol. Co to je? Velgard? Ten je krásny, Lost Crown. Vyzerá to nádherné. Na to, že tu je toho Ubisoft. Stračku tam dajú.
This Henry guy just can't seem to catch a break. When we...
Jasné, že. Dobre, ale ja si musím nastaviť ešte zachytávanie mikrofónu. OK, dáme ho na koľko? 20... Máme 25.
We last left the blacksmith.
Hej, dobre. Takže 25 bude stačiť. A teďka sme chceli tuto tiež nastaviť 25. Počkaj, nie filtre.
Smith's son turned knight at the end of the original Kingdom Come Deliverance. Things were finally starting to look up for him.
We did a fine job.
But the sequel, in true video game sequel fashion, starts by knocking him down a peg or two and dumping him into a new, larger open world to regain his dignity, one side quest at a time. And, to be honest, that's refreshing.
If you do not believe me, try me.
The story of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 picks up almost immediately where the first one left off, but it's certainly not essential to have played it to follow what's going on.
Cool.
Thanks to an extended intro, that brings you up to speed on the broader strokes. The year is 1403. Henry is a village boy from Bohemia, modern-day Czech Republic, who saw his home burned to the ground due to a civil war for the crown taking place between two half-brothers. He ended up in the service of a frustrated war for the crown, in place with Czech Republic, who saw his home burned to the ground due to a civil war for the crown taking place between two half-brothers. He ended up in the service of a frustratingly good-looking Nepo baby Sir Hans Capon to try and help out the supporters of the royal brother, who isn't going around burning down villages. And that plan got a little sidetracked.
What's the matter? Females! Let's go to them.
It's not exactly a start back from square one though. Henry began the first game as the kind of old school RPG protagonist who is really just some random guy with no skills to speak of. He could barely hold a sword, and the unforgiving combat really made you feel that until you put in the time to master it. But Henry's a seasoned adventurer now. He knows how to read, which is practically a superpower in medieval Europe. And while you were out partying, he studied the blade.
I surrender.
This is reflected in the changes to combat in KCD2, which the developers described as lowering both the skill floor required to play competently and raising the skill ceiling for the most devoted warriors. There are only 4 attack directions now instead of 5. Thrust attacks are no longer a separate attack button and have instead been folded into the combo system for weapons that make sense with them only. Parries are a bit easier to pull off, and much to my delight, blocking can now defend you from multiple attackers, as long as they're all in front of you.
Come on then!
Basically, whether you mastered KCD1's combat or not, the lower skill requirement at the very beginning models the fact that Henry is simply a better fighter by now. But careful stamina management is still the core of every scrap, and button mashing is one of the quickest ways to die. I came across plenty of challenging encounters even as someone with more than 100 hours across 2 playthroughs in KCD1. It's not as easy to spam your way through them by getting a couple of powerful combo moves down to muscle memory.
Mercy, spare me.
Fuck you.
The world of Kingdom Come down to muscle memory.
Mercy, spare me.
Nope. I don't think so. Kámo, to je kurva dobré. Mercy, spare me. Nope. Na jakej kvalite to mám? UHDčko s těmi.
World of Kingdom Come Deliverance to muscle memory. It's not as easy to spam your way through them by getting a couple of powerful combo moves down to muscle memory.
Mercy, spare me.
Kámo, to vyzerá kurva dobre.
The world of Kingdom...
Musím sa vám priznať, KCDčko som v živote nehral, ale táto dvojka vyzerá kurovsky šťavná.
There is no greater pain than watching your home fall to ruin. Since the skelmars ripped out the heart...
Že by to bol až taký rozdiel? Jednotka a dvojka? Je to krásne spravená hra.
Come Deliverance 2 is quite a bit larger as well, with 2 distinct maps about the size of the first games that you can travel back and forth between once both are unlocked. The terrain feels fairly familiar, for the most part. We're still in the central Bohemian woodlands, basically just over the hill from where KCD1 left off, but the level of detail on the terrain and vegetation is a noticeable step up, and better yet, it's way more optimized. My RTX 4070 Super still can't run KCD1, a 6-year-old game, on max settings, but what I played of KCD2 rarely had any performance problems.
You won't
The centerpiece of this new world is the city of Kuttenberg, which is quite a bit larger, denser, and more vibrant than anything we saw in KCD1. It's certainly no Paris or Prague, but navigating its crowded streets and markets, taking shortcuts through back gardens, and admiring its grand Gothic architecture is a complete change of pace from wandering around muddy woodland trails. It's big enough to get lost in, built on a realistic scale that makes towns in a lot of other RPGs feel like
Jako vážně. Trubka z prdele.
tiny dioramas.
Počká, můžu se napít?
The side quests I got to play were also very open-ended and complex. The most notable example of this was an arc involving two rival sword schools in Kuttenberg, with the older and more established one, who just so happened to support the wrong king, trying to force out the newcomers, who were loyal to our boy, the rightful heir. It fell on my shoulders to steal a ceremonial sword from the established school and display it on the walls of the town hall, which would be seen as an open call for challengers. The quest doesn't much care how you get the sword. I took a sneaky approach, picking a lock to the guild side entrance, but often you'll be able to choose violence, or even diplomacy, to solve your problems. What it does care about is whether or not you got caught carrying out this little false flag operation, as it can affect how the tournament between the two schools play out. I, of course, maintained plausible deniability and won the competition for my school, but there are a variety of other ways it could have progressed, some of which have long-term consequences.
Look at that! Henry remains unbreakable and undefeated!
Another quest gave me the option of killing or talking my way past some quote-unquote bandits, and I was told that if I didn't kill them, they might show up later and present me with new opportunities.
Lord von Bergov sent us to find the renegades who ambushed some knights company down by the pond yesterday. A couple of them fled and are hiding out here in the rocks. So tell me who you are and what you know about it.
Skills and perks have also been expanded upon, and the perks themselves are generally more powerful. Some of the ones in the first game offered a boon and a penalty, which made them feel more like side grades. Perks in KCD2 are more straightforward upgrades, which they should be, especially if I'm going to spend my scarce, hard-won progression.
Nightcap, Barefoot, Lucky Day, to je asi nějaké zakradanie. Cheers, na zdravie.
Points on them.
Co to tam bylo? Drunk full. Krčmový bitkár.
Especially if I'm going to spend my scarce, hard-won progression points on them. Almost everything else Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has to offer feels like a careful refinement of its predecessor. Warhorse isn't reinventing the wagon wheel here. Diplomacy still takes into account factors like what clothing you have on and how clean you are, with a new system of saved favorite outfits so you can quickly switch between combat gear and something more suited to a soiree. But this time, there's more emphasis on picking the right thing to say for the situation, instead of just the option you have the best stats for. Alchemy is back, allowing you to craft instead of just the option you have the best stats for. Alchemy is back, allowing you to craft various potions and concoctions. It's been made less fiddly. There's a new blacksmithing minigame for forging your own gear and making a bit of coin, following in Henry's father's footsteps. The reading skill has been replaced by scholarship, which is gained by reading books and can provide boons like opening up new dialogue options. Henry's still crap at reading Latin though, and I'm not sure if that could be fixed. And in addition to new, more diverse movesets for all kinds of melee fighting, Henry can finally get his hands on some guns. Now, this is the early 1400s, so we're talking about extremely primitive firearms, the kind that had the tendency to blow up right in your hands.
My leg!
So don't go expecting to be medieval John Wick. But if you point them in the right direction from close enough range, there's really no amount of armor that will save your foes from the blast. Then you probably want to grab a sword because the remaining foes will not stand and wait for the subjective eternity it takes for you to reload.
Sorry! Take that!
In just about every sense, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is shaping up as simply a smoother, prettier, more refined continuation of the things I liked about the original. The core mechanics are mostly the same, but sharper and with deeper progression. The world looks familiar, but broader and more grandiose. I had 2 whole days to play it, and it felt like far too little. When I was first turned loose from the stocks to pick my own path to glory, I felt that tingly feeling you get the first time you play Skyrim or The Witcher 3, of a massive world full of diverse adventures that aren't just clearing icons off a map. I look forward to spending dozens of hours exploring, gearing up the authentic medieval weapons and armor, and progressing through the improved perk system. Maybe Hans will stop being a huge bag of dicks too.
We've got no message, no coin, nothing but our ragged asses.
You know, anything is theoretically possible. I'm just glad I won't have to wait much longer.
As 2024 comes to a close, there is one question on everyone's mind. What is the game of the year? And this year, it's on the week of December 16th with our podcast, Nintendo.
What'd you think after playing
Big games? Log on and join us in celebrating this year's.
It's been a great year for games already so far. Lots of great games.
Log on and join us in
Jasné.
celebrating this year's best in gaming.
Neviem, či aj vykonejšie. Čo to bolo?
Only on IGN.
To sú nejakí zergovia. Neviem, či to nie je oný. Warhammer.
Even after the positive preview for Avowed this summer, I found myself wondering if it was a fluke.
Which way?
Maybe it was just a fun mission. Maybe Obsidian won't be able to keep my interest as more quests are discovered. It's a fun mission. This summer.
Je to Witchfire? Teraz si to Faraday's. Kai. No tak toto mi nedá pokoja. Jasne. Cobra Kai. Určite. Vypadá to jak ona.
Even after the positive preview for Avowed this summer, I found myself wondering if it was a fluke. Maybe it was just a fun mission. Maybe Obsidian won't be able to keep my interest as more quests are discovered. Maybe it was just a nice day. Nope. Avowed is just a lot of fun. Coming fresh off of trying out Dragon Age the Veilguard, I was so happy when I discovered Coming fresh off of trying out Dragon Age the Veilguard, I was so happy when I discovered just how evil I could be to people I met along the way right from the start of Avowed. Something Veilguard just didn't fulfill.
I am ready. Do it.
From the start, I had one NPC dropping F-bombs because I was going to leave her in prison. A short while later, a duo would try to intimidate me on a bridge only to meet a swift demise. I wasn't in the mood for their nonsense, I just wanted to be evil, and while I could have handled it the nice way, sometimes being evil is just more fun.
Another win, but who's counting?
Akorát to hodnotenie je na piču, ale takéto hry ja priam milujem.
Events are weaving together quickly now, Rook. The fate of the world shall be decided soon.
BioWare.
It will not be easy.
Pekný gameplay.
You are this world's only hope.
Wow, to je krásne. I to druhé. Jej. Oj.
It's not just the fact that you have more nuance with every conversation, it's empowering to craft the kind of hero or villain you want to be. Sure, Obsidian has a story to tell, but I feel more in control when deciding how these scenarios play out. The character customization options will allow you to craft the face of the character you'll build, and while you don't see it all that often, you can make someone perfectly lovely, or someone that looks like they came straight out of that creepy claymation episode of Adventures of Mark Twain.
Try to survive. Same thing I do every day.
Even the vendors have unique banter. I had the chance to meet the ex-husband of another nearby vendor, and the two would talk badly about each other because of their failed marriage. Another vendor had a past relationship with my companion Kai and warned him not to cross her again. These little beats do a lot to make the world feel like it has a history, and you'll uncover more of that as you adventure. I love these dangling threads that are teased throughout the playthrough. Hopefully, I get to tug on some of them and see how deep each story goes.
I told you not to show your face around here again.
On the combat front, I also immediately noticed improvements, especially in the sound department. Obsidian clearly spent a lot of time working on the audio and combat flow, and it's immediately noticeable. The sound spikes are so satisfying to hear when you've stunned an opponent and can execute a flurry of blows or bullets, or when using stealth and you're able to execute your prey with an ethereal blade. And one addition we got to see for the first time was the ability to use third-person or first-person combat. Both feel great, and while I personally opted for the first-person perspective most of the time, third-person is looking and feeling good too. The only slight gripe I have is that the movement can have a bit of that floaty Obsidian style to it in third-person, but that doesn't affect combat all that much.
Watch out!
And while I'm discussing minor complaints, knowing full well that Obsidian still has months of polish time left, I did feel that your companion Kai was a bit too handholdy with his tips at times. There were a few moments when I was simply scavenging for loot and found him whispering tips about a puzzle in my ear.
I think there's something on the upper floor. We might be able to reach it from outside.
I know Obsidian is trying to help out new players, but it takes away from that feeling of accomplishment you get when solving the mystery for yourself. Kai, I know how to solve the puzzle, okay? Like, give me a second.
You got everything you need to fix up your armor. Let's head to camp.
But to get back to the positives, loot was also a highlight, even early on. Upgrading from a bow and arrow to an arquebus felt awesome. And even though I probably said arquebus wrong, the trade-off with the rifle is that it has a long reload time, but once you've upgraded your abilities with it, you'll unlock faster reloads and more damage. And the ragdoll physics add to the fun factor as well. Yet again, though, my time with Avowed felt all too short. And make no mistake, there was plenty to explore in this small area. I found a spider cave where I took on a spider boss. I found the entire hour-long demo that we had the first time we played Avowed, and a plethora of small stories within the world, like this one guy who happened to be missing a ring and trying to find it. And I left wishing that Obsidian had given us more time to play, but that's a good sign. And so far, everything seems to be coming together in what I can best describe as a really fun RPG. But more importantly, it feels like an RPG where I'm in control of my own destiny, and while the decisions I'm making will have consequences, I love knowing that I get to be the one directing the orchestra, so to speak.
We'd be most appreciative, of course.
In both of my hands-on sessions with Avowed, I've only been able to see the Dawn Shore section of the map and not much more. I do hope there's plenty of content here, but I'd really like to see more, given how close the February release date is now. When I asked Obsidian about this, they promised several biomes would be explorable, and that will no doubt add a lot to the visual diversity of the world. I just wish we could get a peek at it beyond the footage from the very first gameplay reveal from many months ago. No spoilers on the story here, but the one narrative hook that is set up early on is a mission which takes you to the voice. This voice leads you through the map and is clearly an entity you'll hear from again during your adventures. When given the chance to help it or refuse to make a deal, I decided against siding with a blue light, as I've learned nothing good ever comes from a deal with an all-powerful entity. But I will be curious to see how that plays out in the end. The voice did not seem happy. And that that's really the best you can hope for from previews of an RPG like this. You get just enough to leave you wanting more, and Avowed certainly accomplishes just that. I want to power up my companion Kai to see what other attacks he can do. I want to discover the coveted weapons the design team told us about during the pre-hands-on presentation. I want to kill more people and betray my friends, and Avowed is empowering me to do exactly that. Maybe I'll let the Virgin live this time.
It's all right. I'm sure someone else will give me a hand.
Avowed is set for a February 18th release date, and I can't wait to find out just how evil.
So, contestants, are you ready?
You coming?
Weeks after it was released, with Firewalk closed for business shortly thereafter. 8 years, and given the market's love for games like Minecraft and Rust, such a gaming titan should have undoubtedly made waves with this project. When Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, though, the project was swiftly killed with little reason publicly given beyond inconveniences in switching engines to increase player count on the servers. These examples of the current AAA publishing cull reflect a deep-rooted fear to engage with anything new and original, publishers perhaps more risk-averse than ever to stray out of their established IP safety bars. But even well-known IP that could be worth millions in sales and revenue is being left to rot. Despite owning Infamous, Jak and Daxter, Killzone, Resistance, and Sly Cooper, to name a few entries in PlayStation's sprawling dormant library, Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki recently claimed the company lacks enough original IP to consolidate itself as a true gaming powerhouse.
Yeah, you talking to him?
What Totoki may mean is that Sony's older catalog of library IP does not fit the mold of what every publisher has been mindlessly chasing for the better part of the decade, the next big live service money printer. It's difficult to imagine much fanfare for a Sly Cooper reboot where Bentley and Murray are purchased to play, grand heists or season pass bonuses, and worlds are delivered half-baked instead of fully formed. It's undeniable that on some level the video game market has changed forever because of this live service model. New video games don't just have to compete with new rivals, but somehow find space in an increasingly crowded market dominated by decade-old titles like Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto Online, games which will continue to hold higher player counts than many of the best sellers of the last few years. But live service titles require investment of not just money, but also time to find their audience, neither of which was afforded to Firewalk Studios' Concord. The crew of Concord's North Star will never fly again. The recent fate of Concord's Firewalk Studios serves as a microcosm for the increasingly bleak outlook for the next few years in video game development. Concord was Firewalk's first game, its baby in many ways, an 8-year development bolstered by a Sony acquisition and a reported cash injection of $200+ million. PlayStation reportedly believed it had the next Star Wars-esque franchise on its hands. But the game struggled significantly across both its beta testing period and launch, and was soon completely shut down by Sony just weeks after it was released, with Firewalk closed for business shortly thereafter. Concord's downfall happened faster than any other failed game of the live service era.
Don't joke about
Firewalk. To nie ono, czy nie? Určitě nie. Nevadí, uviděl.
Just a decade earlier, though, a similar disaster was plaguing Blizzard's Diablo 3. The crippling Error 37 message made the game unplayable, and fans worldwide decreed the absolute failure to launch. Soon after, the game's real money auction house left players with a foul taste in their mouth that Diablo 3's reputation was roasting in the fires. Instead of abandoning it, Blizzard repaired the game, removed the auction house, and then fundamentally upgraded and evolved it to Diablo 3 2.0 with its Reaper of Souls expansion, finally cementing its comeback as a brilliant game. It's a similar story to what we saw with CD Projekt Red's hard-fought battle to win Cyberpunk 2077 fans back after a disastrous launch. If Concord's alleged $200+ million budget had been lowered and the project direction refocused as a spark for a new universe rather than a big bang, it doesn't seem hard to believe that it could have found an audience with some Blizzard or CDPR-like shepherding from Sony. Many projects akin to Concord could be the medium-sized successes they deserve to be, if not for the financial corners these publishers find themselves painted into.
Endless rage!
And really, maybe some publishers should consider steering clear of these financial quarters entirely. Gamers are beginning to wane interest in these monolithic projects. You need only look at a top-rated games of 2024 list. While 2023's award lists were littered with AAA titles from 500-strong studios, 2024's show a revitalized hunger for a small with need only look at a top-rated games of 2024 list. While 2023's award
Final Fantasy
lists were littered with AAA titles from 500-strong studios, 2024 show a revitalized hunger for a smaller, more independent spirit. Arcade machine throwback UFO 50, the Metroidvania-esque Animal Well, poker roguelite Balatro, and text-based pixel art adventure The Crimson Diamond are just some of the games you'll see appearing again and again on these lists. Despite their numerous differences, they share one thing in common: a smaller, more refined experience that recalls earlier eras of gaming where marriages and mechanics and storytelling were key through technological craftiness, rather than literal country-sized game worlds. The nostalgia they create for older video game generations are central to the heart of their creation. They just want you to pick them up and have a good time. The slow but increasingly clear pivot of video game audiences to a potential indie renaissance is a clear message to publishers that if everything is bigger and bolder, who possibly has the time and energy to play more than 1 or 2 games each year?
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
That's not to undercut the difficulty in getting those independent titles made, mind you. UFO 50's Mossmouth LLC team consisted of 6 developers working over many years, while both Animal Well and The Crimson Diamond share similar stories of being crafted by solo developers, Billy Basso and Julia Minamata respectively, over several years. Even a smash hit like Lethal Company started life as a one-man band developer Zeeker's learning to develop games on Roblox before expanding his knowledge. All of these developers put everything they had over several years of their lives into creating these games, not in pursuit of money, but because of a passion. And this is why they don't need humongous worlds or 300 plus side quests to tick off. These games all feel like lean enjoyment machines. It feels like the top end of the video game industry is currently faced with 2 paths to choose from. The first is the status quo. It can continue to engorge on bigger budgets with impossibly open yet incredibly empty worlds filled with 80 plus hours of content, about 10 of which have any meaning to its players, and or hopelessly pursue the live service train which left the station over 5 years ago with late passengers wondering why the money isn't rolling in anymore. These billion-dollar gambles could pay off, but it's seeming less and less likely every day. Conversely, companies could opt for a second path and take a page out of Julia Minamata, Billy Basso, and Zeeker's books, a wider breadth of projects, smaller in scope and scale, with a refined focus on gameplay mechanics, and perhaps a return to older styles of video games long dormant. Projects where developers aren't afraid to make weirder choices and take some unexpected left turns lest they crash their $400 million ship into a mixed to decent reception and lackluster sales. Maybe studios, and more importantly publishers and shareholders, can remember that we used to play video games because they were fun, not because of their bigger than last year maps carpeted by denser, higher resolution grass that you walk across to finish another piece of side content that pushes you just 1 digit closer to that 100% completion.
This wasn't the plan.
No, it just wasn't the one we started with.
Speaking of which, congratulations, you've almost 100%ed this video. What do you think needs changing in the games industry? Do you want bigger games or more games? Sound off in the comments below. And for needs changing in the games industry. Do you want bigger games or more games?
Metal Slug Tactics, počkej, tam bude napísané asi jeden.
100% of this video. What do you think needs changing in the games industry? Do you want bigger games or more games? Sound off in the comments below, and for everything gaming, you are already in the right place. IGN.
When it comes to the Call of Duty franchise, it's easy to typecast every game as the same big blockbuster Hollywood action movie where you single-handedly save the world from this year's nuclear threat.
People like me and Adler are the reason we ain't speaking Russian right now.
Year after year, this clearly works for one of the best-selling franchises of all time. But the Black Ops series tends to do something a little different from the left trigger, right trigger shooting galleries the franchise is known for. Something a little different from the left trigger, right trigger shooting.
Call of Duty
galleries the franchise is known for.
There's that shooting I remember. remember.
From the Manchurian Candidate-inspired story of the original Black Ops, complete with number stations, and even a hint at who may have actually assassinated JFK,
Tried to make me kill my own president.
to the use of Project MK Ultra, a real-life CIA mind control project from the 1960s in Black Ops Cold War, and recently Black Ops 6's drug-induced survival horror-like emergence mission.
No one fights alone.
The eeriness of these unexplained numbers and disembodied voices during the early days of the Cold War gives an otherwise player a first-person view of the horrors of brainwashing and a deteriorating imagery than one. Visually, it uses traditional horror movie elements like jump scares and unsettling imagery to give the player a first-person view of the horrors of brainwashing and a deteriorating mind. The music is menacing, and the sounds of Belle's heart racing are only interrupted by the droning sounds of an old stereo playing at half speed, while Adler tries his best to drive through Belle's broken mind.
Belle's heart rate is...
Do it now!
Heart rate is spiking. I'm not sure how much longer Belle can last.
This all comes together at the scene's climax, providing the impetus for the whole campaign, when Belle learns the truth about why this happened and how he became the perfect but unfortunate candidate for MK Ultra's testing.
The numbers, Mason. What do they mean? Where are they brought
I don't know anything about any numbers.
Black Ops 1 is also full of some otherwise horrifying segments that are amplified due to their real-world inspirations. One of the most prominent throughout the series is number stations, which were used to relay encrypted messages across one-way radio transmissions. During the Cold War, these stations gained prominence and were used frequently by Soviet spies operating in Western countries. While most number stations are believed to have been nothing more than really secure phone calls, it's alleged that some were used to activate sleeper agents once they heard a specific phrase. The main character of Black Ops 1, Alex Mason, is one of those agents.
The subject has been successfully implanted with the knowledge to translate the number sequences.
Throughout the game, boundaries. By allowing players to explore the abandoned ATA facility to discover its secrets, we get to learn more about the CIA's ties with the characters in Black Ops and how no matter what they do,
At first, the music started slow with a slick bass line and At first, the music started slow with a slick bass.
Si tam zapniem titulky po anglických.
Baseline and a choir whispering two-toed Tom. But by the time we unraveled the mystery of the mythical gator and progressed to the final confrontation, the chorus reached a fevered pitch, the words of which told the tale of poor old Tom. All of these components, the setting, art, and music, set South of Midnight apart. Fevered, mythical. First demo, it was a story of whatever inspired blues and jazz intensifies, and the lyrics help tell the story of whatever beast you're tracking down. Decrypted to recognize. But in the case of South of Midnight, touching a controller wasn't necessary to recognize its best quality, its music. Line. The tale of poor old Tom. Which told the tale of poor old Tom. All of these components, the setting, art, and music, set South of Midnight apart in a major way, and made me extremely excited to get my hands on it. The flip side
apart in a major way and made me extremely excited to get my hands on it. The flip side of that is that what I saw of gameplay offered far less originality. Combat looked like a pretty by-the-numbers system of dodging, striking, and finishing moves that are quite well trodden, and exploration relied on double jumping, mid-air dashing, and grappling to distant locations that are pretty standard stuff. The boss fight against Two-Toed Tom, for example, was a very repetitive standard stuff. The boss fight against Two-Toed Tom, for example, was a very repetitive process of leaping over telegraphed attacks and wailing on the gator when he presented obvious opportunity to do so. Compulsion Games says that while they expect gameplay to be engaging, it isn't nearly as much of a focus as the story, music, and other elements they've clearly put the lion's share of work into. Instead, they're keeping levels relatively short for a 10-ish hour story and putting all of their chips into South of Midnight's exceptional presentation and world building. And so far,
events are weaving together quickly now, Rook. The fate of the world shall be.
Do you think there's a chance?
Right, then máme ďalšiu.
far, I'm convinced they just might pull it off. After all,
and overall relevance of content. Meaningful releases are necessary to maintain players over the course of their seasons. Otherwise, player numbers dwindle as they have other avenues to satisfy the craving of deleting hordes of monsters on their screen. So, if you were one of the many action RPG fans let down by Diablo 4 early on, it's definitely worth a second look now. Diablo 4 Season 5's Infernal Horde's in-game activity is a perfect example of Blizzard listening to player feedback. Players asked for monster density, players got monster density. Jumping into the Infernal Hordes feels like a completely different game than what we got with Diablo 4's vanilla release. Another clue that competition is key. Look, I get it. Diablo 4 doesn't need to be another Path of Exile with a different skin. In fact, it shouldn't be. However, it's refreshing to see that a company the size of Blizzard has been backed so far into a corner that the core gameplay loop of their game is almost unrecognizable. And that's nothing but a good thing for us. I've been playing Diablo 4 seasons longer than I ever have. Raid-like content? Check. The Undercity, an infinite grindable activity where you can target farm loot? Check. I'm more motivated to chase that next upgrade and actually want to take on the uber bosses. Doesn't all feel aimless anymore.
Welcome to King's March.
Meanwhile, Path of Exile's recent Settlers of Calgar released with such high praise from fans that it set a new bar for League content quality. You can't help but thank such competition for allowing it to happen. The 3.25 update for Path of Exile was time-consuming in the best way possible and surely has to be a response to the growing split attention. The fact is that they are doing more to entice you to play their game. They have to be reactive, they have to be innovative, and they have to be creative. And it's working. My jaw legitimately dropped when Grinding Gear showed off all the quality of life updates and new content during the Settlers of Calgar reveal livestream. What do you mean you can hire NPCs to grind while I grind? It was a dream come true for a dream I didn't even know I had. There have been nothing but promising updates for Path of Exile 2, and this most recent release for its predecessor gives me nothing but faith in what's waiting for us in the sequel. Not only will Grinding Gear Games be continually adding content to Path of Exile 2, they will also still support the original Path of Exile with regular leagues as normal. They've even alluded to porting back features that they add in Path of Exile 2. Features like gold, the currency trade market, and more prominent health bars have already been added. So not only will Grinding Gear be in constant competition with other developers, they'll also be competing with themselves.
Here lie the answers you seek.
But what about the little guys? 11th Hour Games are still here. Their 1.0 launch for Last Epoch was insanely popular with high concurrent counts. While Last Epoch did suffer from major server and connectivity issues, the game was still an excellent grind. Their monolith endgame mapping system, while still a little shallow, has so much potential for the addition of depth and player engagement.
Dobra, zajtra pokračujem. Skoro som fakt unavený.